Jay Arden.
Counselor Drew.
Counselor Jordan. Counselor Jordan is our YouTube channel. What I wanted to kick off tonight with our host. So when we see our fabulous Mrs. Warren, we're going to let her give a quick overview of the great work happening here at the Black History Museum. And we're grateful to be hosting our meeting here tonight. We always pay a rental fee when we go to a facility, believe in supporting the mission. If there's a group or an event that you're looking for, obviously this is a beautiful space. And if you are not already a member, and I know most of you are, grateful for that. But if you're not, there is a QR code on that back table. Sign up for their newsletter. Their programming is fantastic. And the mission needs your support more than ever. So from that QR code, you can sign up, become a member, make a donation, etc. With that, I would love to welcome Ms. Shaquille Warren to give a few remarks about all the good work that is happening right here.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to BHMBA. We are so happy that you all are here, and I know tonight you'll have an important conversation, and we are just extremely blessed and happy to host you all. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of all the things that BHMBA has been doing in, I'll just say the last 3 weeks. I'll just do 3 weeks, because if I do the year, I'll be here all right, and you all have important business to take care of. So how many of you all participated in our Emancipation Day outdoor program? Yay, wonderful. So for those of you who were not there, let me just give you a quick overview. So this year we celebrated the 160th anniversary of Virginia's emancipation, and to honor the militiamen who were once stationed here at BHMBA, we partnered with Dustin and his definitely just tremendous team to create advocacy on behalf of those militiamen. We want to make sure that we are honoring them as we are in this space every day. And we had some beautiful projections on the building, and that went on for about an hour. So those of you that were able to join us, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support, and thank you for continuing to come to BHMBA and learn more about what we do. How many of you all are affiliated or have heard about our Children's Book Festival? Anybody? Okay, so I'll tell you about our Children's Book Festival. So for the past 7 years, we have a festival here on site where we bring in first and second graders, and we expose them to literacy. We give them books, and it is affiliated with the National Black History Month theme. This year's Black History Month theme is African Americans in labor. So students come in, and so far we have supported Henrico Public Schools, Richmond Public Schools, Hopewell. Hopewell, this was their first time participating in the Children's Book Festival, so we're very honored to have them here this year, and also homeschoolers. We had never opened up our doors to homeschoolers in the past for our Children's Book Festival, and we're honored that we were able to bring them into BHMBA and expose them to different literacy elements. So thus far, we have supported over 300 students. It has been lively on a Tuesday, so if you want to come out and hang out with BHMBA and support the youth, come and join us at 10 a.m. We have 2 more dates. And if you want to come and see us next Tuesday, just let me know. I'll be right in the back to give you some more updates about that. And most recently, we have been honored to be featured in a national article that the BBC wrote about prominent institutions across the country that are educating the public about Black history. And BHMBA was honored to be featured in that article. We were featured with the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Women's Art Museum, a lot of institutions. And for BHMBA to be featured again is honored just to be a jewel right here in Richmond. So continue to support us, continue to come out and learn more about BHMBA and how we are uplifting the community and spirit of African American history alive and well in this institution. So just talking about some upcoming exhibitions and opportunities that you all may have to interact with BHMBA, we are bringing Arthur Ashe home. So I know we are coming up on the 50th anniversary of his Wimbledon win, and BHMBA is conducting an exhibition called Arthur Ashe, An Enduring Legacy, where we are partnering with UCLA to reveal some never seen to the public aspects of his oral history documentation. And we're really, really excited to partner with UCLA to bring Arthur Ashe back home. This is his home. He deserves a presence. He deserves a long-lasting presence here. And here at BHMBA, we want to make sure that the community never forgets about all of his contributions. So to that end, we are also organizing an online art auction, which will launch on May 13th. It will run from May 13th to May 27th, and you can bid on certain items that will be available on artsy.net, and all of the proceeds will go towards helping us fund this exhibition and this collaboration with UCLA. Outside of that, I feel like I've told you all what's been happening in the last 3 weeks. So I guess when you all come back, I'm not sure when you all are going to come back, I'll have more updates for you. But please enjoy tonight, and again, please consider becoming a member. We are honored to be in community with you and to serve as a community space. So again, my name is Shakia. I'll be right in the back if you want to talk to me, and the floor is all yours. Thank you all for coming.
Our guest presentation list, I'm going to read through these, but Katie, if you want to start making your way up. Our first presentation update will be Richmond Public Schools with our board member, Katie Ricard. We'll have an audits update with our wonderful city auditor, Riyad Ali. And then Mayor Avula is on his way for another event. He will close us out with a budget conversation. And we will, welcome questions after each speaker, but be mindful with our overall schedule of we have this space till 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Katie Ricard. I'm the 2nd District Representative for Richmond Public Schools. Thank you for letting me be here. Things are happening. It's budget season. And so as many of you have read in the papers, our superintendent put forth an ambitious budget, an increase of $30 million. And so the city gave us $9.6 million towards that. We are grateful for the city's support. It was a time when many departments just got cuts and reductions, and at least Richmond Public Schools got an increase. It wasn't the increase we were hoping, but it's an increase we're going to work with. What does that mean going forward, that we did not get the full increase that we were expecting? One of the things that we have is an additional $16.5 million worth of collective bargaining agreements to fund for next year. As a school board, at our last meeting, we reaffirmed our commitment to paying those increases. Those agreements were negotiated in good faith, and we want to hold to them. So the superintendent actually released a statement to the Richmond community this week, and he just kind of outlined what he would have to do going forward. And so things we're going to look at to meet that $16.5 million, plus other things we want, is to close out vacancies that were never filled, to look at cutting some of our contracts where things can be slimmed down, and just where we can reduce other expenditures. Our hope, of course, and our goal, and I believe we will reach it, is not to cut positions that have people in them. That is not the goal. The goal is to look at where can the fat be trimmed off. We're also, of course, continuing to look at our vacant properties, what we could do with those, what are worth maybe giving over to the city for sale, what we still want to keep for expansion. The south side is growing rapidly, and so they will need more schools in the future there. But that is what we're looking at in terms of the budget. Like I said, I do want to thank the mayor and city council for their support. We know they care about our students and our teachers. We just know it's tough, and we know next year is going to be tougher. So this is not a bad exercise for us to go through. Another exciting thing that the school board is doing, and it was in the news this morning, is that we are actually starting an artificial intelligence task force to look at how does AI play into our schools. If any of you have used ChatGPT, you know that there are benefits to artificial intelligence. There are also downsides to artificial intelligence, and we feel like we will do our students a disservice if we don't teach them the pros and cons of it and how to use it responsibly and when not to use it. So that's something we're going to begin exploring so that we can then create a policy around how does artificial intelligence play into our schools. So some fun things. Tomorrow is kindergarten signing day at all our elementary schools. So in District 2, that is Carver Elementary and Fox Elementary. It will be from 8:30 to 10, and families are invited to bring their kindergartners. They get to sign, enroll for kindergarten. They'll get a free backpack. Staff will be on hand to answer questions. They haven't done anything like this since the pandemic, so it's exciting to have our families coming back into the schools for enrollment. A few other things in terms of fundraising for our schools. I left some information back there on the Carver Literacy Project. That is a nonprofit with Kiwanis, and they have used the funds that they've raised for that to fund an additional reading interventionist teacher at Carver, which has led to some great gains in their literacy scores this year. So they want to bring this teacher back again, and so they're raising funds for that. And then Fox Elementary has their annual Strawberry Street Festival on May 3rd at Park Springs, and they are looking for volunteers for that. It's also just a fun place to bring your kids and to run around. There's free acts, food and games and things like that. The final thing on the back table is a QR code to sign up for my newsletter. I send it out every month, hopefully always the first of the month, although it was the second of the month this month. And so it allows me to highlight what the board's working on, things that are going on at our schools, volunteering, fundraising opportunities, and also just a topic of education that people might not know as much about. So I encourage you to sign up. I'd love for you to read, and of course, if you have any feedback on what you'd like featured in there, I would love that as well. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Our next guest speaker is Rihanna. Rihanna, she's coming up. For those who just came in, just a reminder, we record our own meetings, so if you missed something in the beginning, you can catch it on YouTube at Counselor Jordan. Thank you so much. Rihanna?
All right. Good evening, District 2. Hello to everyone watching or recording. It's great to see you all out here today. As was said earlier, my name is Riyad Ali, and I'm Richmond's relatively new city auditor. Now, I say relatively new because I've been in that position for about a year and maybe about a quarter, but I've been managing audits and investigations for over 16 years. Prior to working for the City of Richmond, I worked as the Assistant Inspector General for the Broward Office of the Inspector General down in South Florida. In that role, I instituted a data-driven approach to audits and investigations. And using that data-driven approach, we identified millions of dollars in fraud, waste, abuse, and government inefficiencies. Now, since starting with the City of Richmond, I've instituted that same approach with my team. And in a very short period of time, we've had very similar success using the data-driven approach. A good example of that is a couple of months ago in December, we issued a report on the city's management of a streetlight maintenance contract. And in that audit, we found about a little bit over $1.2 million in financial discrepancies, including overbillings in the city. As you can imagine, we recommended that the city recoup and recover those misspent funds. We also made various other recommendations regarding procurement, contract management, and other issues to help shore up the city's processes. Now, I hope I made that sound really fun and really exciting, because our office is currently recruiting. So if you're out there looking, brush up those resumes and you can send them in over to our office. But I'm going to be honest with you, looking into financial issues really is a whole lot of spreadsheeting and a whole lot of coffee. Maybe a little bit too much coffee. So, what I wanted to do today, why am I here today? What I want to tell you guys about is it, do I think you guys should drink more coffee? I mean, maybe, right? District 2 has the best coffee. Am I looking for a couple more resumes? I wouldn't mind, guys. It's a recruiting season, so send them in, but I'm only joking. What I'm here to do today is to tell you guys about the Office of the City Auditor, right, and what our mission is, and how we go about achieving that mission. So the Office of the City Auditor, we're also known as the OCA. Our mission is to promote open and accountable city government through independent audit services. You're probably thinking, well, okay, what does that even mean? So we're going to break it down to smaller pieces to go over our mission. So the first part of our mission is to promote open government. And to promote open government means to promote transparent government. So how do we go about promoting transparent government? Well, as you probably guessed, we do that through the audit processes and through the audit reports that we issue at the end of an audit. Now, these audit reports are available to the public right on our website where you guys can read them and see the results of these audits. And in these audit reports, we document in detail how a government process, a government operation actually works, right? You can go behind the scenes and understand what's actually happening when something occurs. Whether it be managing a contract, a government process, taxes, whatever it may be, we document what's actually occurring. And in these reports, we document something that we call findings, right? And essentially what those findings are, is telling the city management, city government, the public, what is going wrong in that government operation. We also find opportunities for improvement, and we call those recommendations. And so those recommendations essentially tell city administration and city management what they should do and need to do to fix the problem, right? Again, these are all documented in our public reports. And another good example of this process playing out is something you guys may be familiar with, an audit we issued about 2 months ago, maybe at this point, and it was an audit of the city's process for awarding and managing grants that were issued to not-for-profits across the city of Richmond. In that audit, we identified over approximately $1.5 million in grants that were awarded to not-for-profits who weren't eligible based on the city's application criteria. We also found problems with the management of these grants, right? Once the money went out the door, how the city managed those grants to ensure there was a return on investment to the city. Now, at the end of that audit, right, those were the findings, right? We identified how can we fix this process was our recommendations. And of course, there were many recommendations, very detailed, very long, that we issued to the city. But the important ones obviously were, forming a standardized process or framework when we award these grants. So in the future, we should have a standardized process and framework. And of course, more robust contract management, rather than grant management, right? What we do to verify the use of these funds when it goes out. And those were our recommendations. So that is how the Office of the City Auditor, the OCA, promotes transparent and open government. But as you guys probably know, transparency alone is simply not enough. And that leads us to the second part of the OCA's mission, where we promote accountable city government. And so the way we promote accountable city government is of course related to the audit process and a lot of the audit reports and the recommendations that I just described to you guys. So once we issue a report and we issue these recommendations, we issue them to very specific people who is responsible and who is accountable to fixing the problem. That could be a department director, that might be a deputy director, a manager, and oftentimes it's even the CAO themselves that we issue these recommendations for. Those are the people we are going to hold accountable to fixing the problem. And when we issue these recommendations, they come with a priority. You can see them right in our reports. Either it's a high priority for the city, a medium priority, or a low priority. So a high priority obviously means it's something that we recommend you fix as soon as possible, right? It's causing a problem, this needs to be remedied. And so when we issue these reports and these recommendations, we don't just disappear into the darkness and never be heard from again, right? We're not just paper pushers. We follow up with these departments, right? We follow up constantly, consistently with these departments to ensure these problems are fixed, right? We're very annoyed about this. In fact, we call it being constructively annoyed, right? Because the only way to fix problems is to make sure these problems get fixed. So we constantly follow up with the city departments. And when they believe they have remedied a recommendation, right? They have implemented a recommendation, we do require proof and evidence that the recommendation was actually implemented. We test that evidence and say, okay, does it look like we fixed the problem? If the answer is yes, great. That is an implemented recommendation. The answer is no, we'll work further with the department so they truly understand the problem and what they need to do to fix the problem that we identified. Now, all of this is documented in a public report that you all have access to. We publish reports every quarter on this exact process that I just described. So at any given moment, right, Vice President Jordan, Mayor Avula, but you guys here in the public can read these reports, right? And you can see how many recommendations that we have made that are currently still outstanding in the city. What is the priority level of those recommendations? What departments do these recommendations belong to? And how many recommendations over the last quarter have been fixed or implemented by the city? It's a great document to look at to understand what's going on in the city. So the last part of our mission, right, is perhaps the most important part of our mission of all. That relates to independent audit services. So what does independence mean in the context of the city auditor's office, right? Well, what independence means in our context is that we are organized as a department, right, under city council, under the city council. So we are not organized under the mayor or under city administration. And so that means we do not report to the people that we audit. Right? I'm going to repeat that because it's a very important concept to understand. We do not report to the people that we audit. So that means the results of our audit are fact-based, objective, and impartial. Right? They're solely based on the evidence and telling the public and city council and administration what is actually happening based on objective evidence. So it's a very important concept for any government, their oversight office, right, to have independence, whether that be an auditor's office, an OIG, whatever it may be. They need to be independent to figure out what the real problem is and report that to the public. And I'm very proud to say that the city of Richmond does have that built into our code, our charter, and our process, because we do report to city council, and we are allowed to truly tell you guys the results of our findings, our audits, in an objective and honest way. So if you're the kind of person that loves promoting accountability, loves promoting transparency in an independent way, you might be a future city auditor. As I said earlier, we are recruiting so you can kind of brush off those resumes and you can send them in. If you love coffee, we may give you guys a call. Now, how can you get in touch with the OCA, with our office, right? This is one of the most important ones. The best way to get in touch with us is simply to visit the city's website and click City Auditor. It'll take you right to our webpage. On that webpage, you can contact us. You can see our phone number and give us a call. We always answer our phones. If we don't leave a message, we'll get back to you as soon as possible. You can also find where you can email us. I'll give you the email address right now. It's askcityauditor@rva.gov. Right? So that's askcityauditor@rva.gov. It's listed on our website. I'm going to tell you a big secret. That email address, I'm the one who checks it. So if you email us, I will see, me personally, will see exactly what you emailed us about. And if you've ever done it before, you will get a reply directly from me, most of the time. And finally, and most importantly, quite honestly, is the report section on our webpage. You can click it and you can see reports from the Office of the City Auditor dating way back, before even I was a city auditor, right? We go back 10 years of reports. You can read them and see how things have changed, and you can see the results of our audits. Now, you probably hear about the results of our audits right from your friends and family. You probably see them on Twitter, you might see them on Reddit, on Facebook. You might read them in the Richmond or in the Richmond Times, right? Heck, you might go home for the evening, you see it on the evening news, breaking story, first thing. But you know what they say? You've seen the movie, right? Now read the book. So go to our website, check out our reports, and you can see what the OCA really said the problem in city government was, what our recommendations were to fix the problem, and get a real understanding of the situation, right? The best thing you can do is be an informed public. That is really the best public. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Regarding your non-governmental grants that were used fraudulently received, do you monitor not only the grants that were in error, but those other
remember, we're the city auditor's office. We don't manage the process. We made recommendations on how the process should be managed moving forward. And that's why it's important always to read the report. But we did not conclude any grant money was fraudulently used, right? We mentioned the awards did not meet the established criteria that the city was using through a broken process.
So monies was given.
Yeah, money was awarded, and so if you read, again, that's why it's so important to read our reports. In our report, you will see, as staffing is available, right, as we're trying to staff up, we're going to take a look at some of these grants and how they were used specifically in the future, in our future audit plans as we move forward. But at the auditor's office, we don't do the monitoring of grants, we don't do the monitoring of contracts, right? We have an audit plan, and we go in, of course, annually and throughout the year, and we audit specific things to see what's going wrong, what's being used, right? What's being misspent, like in the streetlight example, the millions of dollars that potentially were fraudulently taken from the city. And other examples, as we go on, we look into that. We don't actually manage any of the programs. We do the ongoing monitoring of those programs. That's management's responsibility.
So do you know how much, or who would know how much of the funding was sent out to inappropriately applied for candidates?
So the audit report identified approximately $1.5 million went uneligible. Is about, I got it in front of me, about 1.4 something, 1.5 around that number, where they didn't meet some of the criteria that was outlined in the application.
How do you find out if your recommendations were followed through?
Yeah, so like I said, we constantly and consistently work with the departments. Every quarter, before we issue the report, you will see, we reach out to them, we ask them where are they at, what have they done, we work with them if they're working on processing the information, and then we publish those results every quarter. Right, so like I mentioned earlier, you guys can always visit our website and have some examples of the reports I'm discussing if anyone wants to see them. And you can see which recommendations were implemented or not. They're also listed on our website, which ones are implemented or not. You go to the same website, the section, you can see what recommendations are open or closed. But the best way to do it is through that quarterly report process.
Do you or does anyone in the city council has the power to make those departments do that? When you're making recommendations and you follow them up?
Yeah, so we follow up, again, as the auditor, and any auditor in any municipality, we can't make anyone do anything, right? We follow up, and then every quarter there's also an audit committee where they follow up, and the city council follows up. I think at GovOps consistently follows up, asks the questions to see where we're at. And I know the CAO and the mayor asked us the same exact questions and following up. And I think it's important to know in this entire process, some recommendations, even with ones that are high priority, right, they take a longer time to implement. Some things just take time. You can't just problem solve, right? These problems have been ongoing. So it takes time to fix these problems. And the departments are always working with us to fix these problems. And so just because something is open for a length of time, it doesn't mean people aren't working on fixing the problem. Right? People, I can tell you firsthand, they are always working with us to identify and fix the problem. The city auditor, about a year and a quarter-ish, year and 4 months.
Has your office ever audited FOIA officers in the city?
No, we haven't audited.
Okay, and I've noticed at the state level that mail, has there ever been a report about the mail service?
I think a federal report was done, if I'm not mistaken, but we don't have authority to that. Thank you guys. Thank you.
We are grateful every day for you. We talk loud on the phone, sometimes more often than others. And the reality is, it's really tough work, and it's not work you necessarily want to see, but it's work that needs to be done. And I do think there's been a real commitment to following through on recommendations. So there'll be more, we talked about this at our last meeting, there are going to be more audit reports that highlight things that we are discouraged to read or outraged to read, that may rise to the occasion of, someone's going to be fired, maybe they're going to go to jail. And part of it is reading that out, but it's also preventing other people from thinking it's acceptable. So in a way, it hurts to read it in the news, but it needs to be out there because we have got to discourage it and stop it from happening. So Really important work. And again, on the website, if folks have hesitations about raising a question that they want to the auditor to look into, you can always forward that to myself or to Sven. And there is an audit committee that meets every other month? Every quarter. Those are public meetings, and they go through where we are on audits. They develop the audit schedule, so what are the priorities based on what's happening? And I'm guessing sometimes something might reshuffle in that order based on current conditions. But
You can attend virtually, so you just click the link and you can watch it.
yeah. And yes, we are hiring in the auditor's department. There is a hiring freeze, but we're in the middle of budget cycle right now. And there is just, a great, I think, need and interest to make sure we're continuing to bolster this department. It's really critical. One position in particular that I know we're going to be adding is one that has expertise in utilities. So that should be coming online hopefully. Obviously, you got to find that person, but that is something that we have consensus on within council to have as a budget amendment. And with that segue, I'm going to welcome our mayor, Daniel Bola, up to the podium here at the front. Extremely busy, and in 4 months had to develop a budget and manage a water crisis and get to know your council, colleagues, administration staff, look for new CAO, et cetera, et cetera. So where we are, just before I hand over the mic, and maybe we'll just have two, but the mayor developed his budget, it's come over to council, we're having meetings on that budget to try and figure out are there ways to add in some priorities that council members have heard from their community, keeping in mind that the mayor has already and his team have had to shrink a delta that started out about $60 million. So every department has already said, this is what we can live without, please don't go further. So now it's up to us to try and push a little bit and see, is there any gray area? Is there someone who maybe just took a job somewhere else? Or is there a project that the neighborhood didn't support that maybe we can cut from this? But it's real tough out there. And as we know, it's not just tough in Richmond, it's tough across the country. And I have a real fear that it's only going to get worse. I don't get to be the fun person that Riyadh is when he's up here. But the reality is it's scary out there. I don't want us in 6 months to say, you know what, we got to go back and cut further. So I'd like to be conservative now. And that's why you don't see a lot of amendments from me in this budget. So, Dr. Mayor, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Great to see you all. I will tell you, Riyadh is only fun when he's up here. I think he's an assassin when it's business. No, I really have appreciated Riyadh's approach. We've gotten to know each other, obviously, in the 3 months that I've been in this role. And I think one of the things that Councilwoman Jordan said is that this process of auditing City Hall and city agencies is really desperately needed, right? Because the biggest thing that I came in to address as mayor was getting the basics of City Hall right, making sure that the services, the customer service experience, that the interactions of being able to pay bills and trust what you're getting charged and trust that things are getting processed, that stuff has to be right if people are going to trust their local government. And so part of that process is making sure that Riyadh and his team have full access to everything they need and can really get to the bottom of what's working and what's not working in agencies. And I think what Catherine said is right. We're going to find a lot of stuff, right? Every rock we turn over, we're going to see headlines around things that need to be better. And sometimes those headlines are going to be terrible, like there's fraud going on, we have to address it. And sometimes they're going to be like, there are process improvements that we just need to make. And what I've told Riyadh and really invited him into is that, that's the job that I signed up for, right? We want to embrace that magnifying glass, that spotlight, and make sure that we're fixing it. And so my ask to you all is that, when these things come out, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, every time we do an audit, it's not like, what is the city doing? They're so terrible. But instead, the city is doing the work that we all as the public have asked them to do, to really take a hard look at city government and get the operations right and make sure that we're using audit as a tool to really identify and fix those things. And if we are identifying those things and not fixing them, that's when you can say, what is the city doing, right? Like, but I would ask for the space for us to identify the things that are wrong and really put together corrective action plans and then make sure that we're executing. So that's all pause on that. Talk a little bit about budget. I've been following Liz around today. We were just at an event together. This has been a really intense budget development process, right? This process actually starts back in like August or September because the work of getting to a budget is really, it's year-round work. It's thinking about each department, what are their priorities for the upcoming year, what is the staffing level that's needed, where are the places that they could potentially pull back, and then simultaneously figuring out, okay, what are the revenues that are coming into the city, and what can we depend on. So this year, our projected revenues for next fiscal year are actually pretty significant. $50 million more of money that we're expecting to come into the city through better collections, through just the fact that our city is growing, that we have more real estate tax, we have more people, we have seen some good economic development happening in the city, and that needs to happen a lot more. On the other side of that has been the expense of just the fact that life gets more expensive every year, particularly the economy that we've all been living through these last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Just the cost of doing business costs more every year, the cost of healthcare costs more every year. We have really made it a priority to invest in our staff, right? So for so many years, I've lived in the city for the better part of 24 years now, and for so many years, there has just been a criticism of are we getting the right people? Do we have enough talent? Do we have enough staff? And so what has happened in the last couple of years has been a real commitment to trying to get that right. So one big example, a couple of years ago, City Council decided to move from the Richmond retirement system, which was our own enclosed retirement system, to the statewide retirement system, VRS. Like all the school systems are on, most of the local governments are on, and all of the state is on. And I will tell you, like the second that happened, it totally changed the quality of talent that applies to the jobs that we post. Because now, instead of having somebody who wouldn't want to give up their retirement just so they don't have to work for the state, these are now opportunities for a whole new group of people who can continue feeding into their pension system. And so it's been a game changer for us in terms of the recruitment of talent into the city. But it is more expensive, and so we have to make big investments to move to the Virginia retirement system, but totally worth it. Similarly, we've had to get our salaries up, right? We've really said we want to compete in the region. We know that we're competing with counties that have a lot more money, a lot more resources than we do, and so we've got to invest in people and salaries to make sure that people will choose to be here in the city as opposed to going somewhere else. So as one very specific example, we have increased salaries of sworn officers, police, fire, and emergency communications by 10.2%, something like that. What that does is it puts us over the regional average for each of those positions and really makes us competitive. So now that if somebody's deciding what police force they want to join, they're not going to say, I'm not going to go to Richmond where the job is way harder and I get paid way less. They're going to say, I'm going to go to Richmond where the job is harder, but that I'm appropriately compensated. And so we've made real investments. About $28 million of investments in salary, in operational costs, and really trying to, in retirement, really trying to beef up and make us a more competitive organization to be a part of. So in addition to everything costing more and to us really investing in staff, that $50 million of increased revenue disappears pretty quickly. And that's where a lot of it goes and where it's from. And so, I came into this budget development process saying, those are the things we want to prioritize. Really building the right staff and making sure that we can recruit and retain the best talent possible. Trying to give schools as much as we can, and as you've probably seen in the headlines, We weren't able to meet their request of $30+ million more than we got last year, but we were able to give them $10 million more than they asked for last year, and it's the biggest number we've ever given schools, or about $250 million. Obviously, we'd love to do more, and we'll continue to find ways to support the school system, but I think it's important for, like when we had to close that $60 million gap that Catherine mentioned, when we actually had to put pen and paper and go through every agency and figure out, okay, how much are we going to cut from this agency? What are we going to trim from this program? And I think that's part of what we need our partners in the schools to do. And their superintendent, Jason, has been great about receiving that, understanding that, and getting ready to do that work while maintaining their commitment to teachers. And I will just admit, I have a vested interest in this. My wife is a Richmond Public School teacher. I want to make sure she gets that raise. So we try to do as much as we could for schools. But it is going to require schools to think about where do they need to cut back to be able to honor those collective bargaining agreements. So in addition to staff, to schools, affordable housing is another one of our major priorities. And so we continue to have both money in the capital budget and as part of our general fund to really make sure that we have enough to try to fuel new a pipeline for housing in our community. So those were the big 3 priorities going in. I'm happy to talk. We'll go to questions in a second. You guys can take it whatever direction you want. But those were kind of the guiding principles when we sat down to really do the budget this year. Obviously, we're still in the process, and so City Council is looking at the budget, trying to figure out what parts of this reflect the things that they prioritize, what parts they don't. I'll maybe say a couple words about the participatory budget process, because I know Council has been talking about this a lot over the last year, and we've actually been, the team has been running the participatory budget. Votes are happening right now. I just voted for my district yesterday. Is that legal? So what will come out of that is a number of projects that are prioritized for each district. And while there is not a specific line item for the participatory budget, what I have told Matthew Slats, who's running the process and currently Chief of Staff to City Council, is that as I've looked at the possibilities for the participatory budget, the vast majority of those projects are things that will come out of our capital improvement. And so what I said to Matthew is go through the process, identify the 9 projects in each neighborhood, and then we'll crosswalk that across our existing budget to figure out what buckets of money can this come out of. Because we do have flexible buckets of money. Like we budgeted about $21 million for complete streets. Now, sometimes we field requests from City Council or from residents, or we look at high injury networks or places where we're seeing a lot of accidents happen, and that's what drives the Build the Streets investment. But now we can use the participatory budgeting process as the way that we're taking direction on where to prioritize that capital investment. So while it doesn't exist in its own line item, it is very clearly a priority to me, to the administration. We will make sure that the majority of those projects that can be funded through the capital improvement budget get funded. And then anything that falls outside of that, we will either try to figure out, okay, is there new money over the course of the year, or do we put it in the budget for FY27? So that's how we, in these initial phases, have chosen to pursue this. And so we'll see how the votes shake out and what we can fund based on our existing budget.
Just to jump in for a moment,
Yeah,
give you
please.
a chance to catch your breath. I know we had talked in previous meetings about the priorities of the second Broad Street Task Force implementation, Second Street Summit implementation, and those are things that I have been continually bringing to administration over the last year, really frankly. So they don't appear as an amendment because I've been talking about it and got commitments from them that they will find a way to start moving on those within the budget that we're going to adopt. So just trust and believe, it's one of my friend's favorite sayings, that you will see work in the second district. Yes.
Absolutely. All right, let's have another questions. I'm sorry, you guys are some. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I've lived down here in Jackson Ward since the late 70s. I know that there is a plan to repave all the city streets at various increments. My question is, Street to Belvedere on Clay, there was a Third Street, the rear of the convention center, Belvedere. If you drive on that street, Clay Street, you'll see that there's uneven transitions at the cross streets. Contractors have long since packed up and left. My question is, should that street remain in the condition that it is?
Should it remain in the condition that it is? I mean, I will say that, do I need a mic?
No.
Okay.
For the recording.
Oh, okay, got it. So, I mean, the simple answer is that if it's not paved evenly, and then we need to relook at it. You know, we have a paving schedule that's posted on the website, but I would be happy to take that back to DPW and just make sure I understand, you know, what's the current vision, is there a plan to come back and even? You're saying the lanes are uneven?
At the cross streets, cross streets at Adams and Clay,
Okay.
on one of the streets.
First and Clay.
I can answer that question.
Oh, really?
It went back to the city, so there's some infrastructure issues that needed to be resolved on the city's end for the paving to continue. So they had intentions to continue it, they had to stop because the city was finished. So, was water supplies for public services. Nothing stopped them, and we haven't seen the city come back to take care of those things. Yes, correct.
So
Yeah.
there is a timetable.
I'm a Clay Street resident, so
Yeah.
that's how I found out.
So what I'll do is I'll figure out what the timetable is, and then Councilwoman Jordan will put it in the next newsletter so that you guys know what's going on.
Spend.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I swear I'm not paying Larkin, but that is the right answer. We've been following up with DPW ever since that paving work started. Because of utility issues, they couldn't complete the project. There's also some issues with certain sections in Jackson Ward where it's concrete versus asphalt, and those are different contractors. In our conversations with Director of DPW, Bobby Vincent, he said they're coordinating with the Department of Public Utilities to make sure that work is completely done, because what we don't want to see is they come back, they pave it, they complete it, they get everything to grade, then they have to tear it back up again to go back under for pipe work. Our Jerome, our immediate past Civic Association president for Carver, can speak to the fact that that is a painful, painful process. Carver went through a multi-year sort of, stepwise process of going to utility work and then paving, utility work, paving. So we want to make sure that when we spend that money to put down the paving, we're doing it for good, or at least for a couple years.
And I will just note that as progress, right? Because I have lived in the city long enough and seen in my own neighborhood in Churchill many times where something gets dug up, or a road gets paved, and then a month later it gets dug up, and then you've got this, so I think we really are trying to build more communication and coordination between agencies. We're not going to get perfect every time because these things are, they just happen on different timelines sometimes. But I know that it's frustrating in the short term, but ultimately it's a better use of your taxpayer dollar and a less frustrating experience in the long term. So I will look into the timeline and make sure these guys can get some communication. Thank you.
Well, on a similar subject, for Clay Street in particular, I personally have made two requests to have a traffic calming table put in at the intersection of St. James Street and Clay Street. It's right in front of the old Black History Museum. And it gets rejected constantly with the advice from the director that the police should be monitoring it better because it's a stop sign and there's some pavement markings. And so when I go to the police, they say, well, it's a city. And when I go to the city, they go, it's the police did. So can you please figure out which one of those is done?
Yes.
And kindly put in a table, a comment there, because it's constantly being run because they're looking at the Brook Road, Adams Street light
Yeah.
and not the stop sign.
Okay. So I
Even school buses.
can commit to getting clarity on who should be making the decision.
That's
I
right.
can't commit to, the reality is that people all over the city are asking for speed tables. What's the cost? Probably $7,500 per. We brought that down a little bit, but trying to figure out where they need to go we really look at where accidents are happening and where we're having issues with speeding. And so there's some degree of, like, there's a method to the madness, right? And I think that's important that we're prioritizing those investments where we're having the biggest concerns. But happy to look into, like, at least figuring out, let's not blame, one department or another, let's get clarity about who should be making the decision. And then deciding, like, how do we actually assess whether that particular intersection should rise to the level of prioritization?
Thank you. Since the second request, a car was coming down St. James Street and one was coming down Clay Street, and they both ran the stop sign. And one car has ended up on the front lady's porch and took the porch. And so there are accident reports at the police that you could check on that, and I'll be happy to do that for this young lady. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to violate my own body rule, I'm sorry. I think to sort of dig into what the mayor speaks to as far as the complexity of this, we actually have a meeting set up with the fire marshal and the chief of the fire department to talk about how we could deploy lower cost speed bumps. Right, what you're seeing now are speed tables, these asphalt speed tables that cost around $3,000 a piece to install. And both because of cost, but also response time for first responders, they don't like them very much, right? Or they want to at least be very deliberate about where they are placed so that they can also make response time that they need throughout the community. So we're looking at on very low throughput streets, which Clay may not be, right? They might be more like St. James, right? Low throughput streets, residential streets where we really want people slowing down the impact of kids and cyclists and what else. Whether we can do lower cost speed bumps that you do see applied in other places. And ultimately that comes down to an approval process through the fire marshal and fire department. So we need to make sure that there's coordination between DPW and RPD and council and the mayor's office and the fire department to make sure we're addressing all of these ones.
Thank you, Sam.
As you probably know, the Englewood Weather Shelter has just closed this week, and I was wondering if your commitment to Broad Street included any outreach workers or mental health services or drug rehabilitation for the folks that are now displaced in our neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have 100 people that were staying in the Salvation Army Weather Shelter. It closed last night, and I imagine some portion of that you will start to see on Broad Street. The budget has not included more outreach workers. It includes the same commitment that we've had. But I recognize, so police department has definitely ramped up presence. They added resources. I think they've brought, there's Officer Ryder is there, and then they brought one more person out of retirement, I think.
Yeah, Mills, Ryder, we've got Cynthia, the whole unit.
It's not enough. It's not enough. Anyone on Broad Street can tell it's not enough. And those of us that own businesses there, we're scared it's going to be like last summer. It's scary for us. And it's scary for the folks that have been displaced that need mental health services, whether it's antipsychotic injections or medications or there's some accident or other treatments. We really appreciate it. Beyond years for the encouragement of social worker. More folks like that would really get people in rehab. Really appreciate it. If there's anybody in these flexible buckets that you were talking about, we really want that sooner than later.
Really appreciate that, Liz. I was looking on this morning actually, and I organized a group to just do another walk down Broad Street so we sort of get a sense of what's in the how's it going. So one option, especially since you bring up the substance use side of this, is that we do have opportunities to apply for state funding through the opioid abatement authority. And so this is helpful for me to say, okay, let's bring it back to the top of our priority list. Maybe hire a few more outreach workers that can help navigate people's resources. But you and I will be in touch, know that absolutely we're committed to revitalizing Broad Street and addressing in a really humane and respectful way how we're supporting residents who are out on Broad Street. So more to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
This follows right along with the Rush Street conversation. As things are happening on Rush Street and you are getting everything together and kind of moving things about, remember the communities that are adjacent to you, specifically Jackson Ward and Carver. Specifically Jackson Ward. And we are really thinking about our park. This same population is likely to take up some kind of residency in our park. And we really, which is directly across the street from Avenue Play from
like, outside of law enforcement, are there any other strategies that like we should be thinking about? Like, tell me a little bit about like what you're seeing and what the concerns are. No.
Please, you want to speak? She lives right across from me.
Okay.
I'm just
Call you Play Street.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, like, we see definitely increase in activity, drug activity that just starts to happen here. And obviously that's a big concern with children, and we just normalize the business that happens. Like kids come and play here, all the girls go down and yesterday. There's a lot of concern around, we have no public restrooms there because of, the concerns about, people overdosing and going to bathrooms. What that means is that children expose themselves in public to go to the bathroom wherever they can behind their cars on my own, but it is what it is. Like it's kind of just they need a place to go to the bathroom. Their children playing in the park, but we can't provide them these facilities because of these concerns will happen to the people in the not addressing the issues.
Hi, I'm also a Clay Street resident. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's one of my outer play part. I also want to make sure that we're being cognizant of third places here in the city, places where people can organize without having a reason to spend money or have a justification for being there. So I do understand what you're talking about, but you also need to be cognizant of the fact that this is a public space and people do have a right to be there, not to do drugs there.
Yeah.
So I would suggest if we know that this is where people congregate, then we direct our resources there instead of tents. And we have tables where community outreach people can be there at the scene when these things are going on. That would be my suggestion.
That's a great idea, and like where my mind was going is we have increasingly leaned into the concept of comprehensive harm reduction, like going to spaces where we know there's a lot of substance use, and making sure that, yes, needle exchange is a part of that to stem the transmission of disease, but it really is about building relationships and helping navigate people's resources. And so I think that is something I'll take to our reviewing team and see, can we move some of our comprehensive harm reduction efforts to outdoor play?
Yeah,
And
of
we
course.
would like to have input and conversation on that before it becomes like a big thing, because we don't all love it and embrace it like you said.
Like during the day, they're not doing drugs as far as when I walk by outdoor play. It happens at night.
I hope for that area like that.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing, number one. Number two, when we had this conversation about the website, I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation and seeing those changes happen. So that was just basically community engagement. I appreciate that opportunity. Number one. Number two, when I hear people talk about affordable housing, I think we need to start talking about affordable home ownership as well. And so therefore, people don't feel as though they need to develop something and call it affordable housing, and then those folks that can't afford to move into those buildings, they're left out. I think also too, what we need to do, what I'm going to suggest to you, Mr. Mayor, is that you create a task force and ask us to help out. Because all too often we're going to tell you what the problems are. If you bring the problems to us, then probably we can help solve those problems and put that off your plate. So my suggestion would be to do I'm going to say a homeless task force, because I see a lot of that in my neighborhood or in the area. And so let us talk about how we can fix this process, if you will. And I can tell you some great people out there on participatory budgeting commission. But then I think also too, what you kind of want to look at is to see if we can help out with this process. So don't let us always kind of come to you and say, here's the problem. Let this become our problem and let us resolve it. And then somebody talked about, you said, who are some of the resources? If you guys haven't met Leon Dangerfield, then you need to meet him. He's doing phenomenal work. And to reduce this problem as far as the city is concerned. Also, too, if you go by Coffee Time Coffee Truck, this is a shameless plug, it's not my coffee truck, but if you go by them, they also are really engaged in making this process become less of an issue for the city of Richmond.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. I'm going to hold you to that since I know you're following through. So, thank you.
I got your phone number.
And I will, anybody who hasn't met Leon, Channel 6 just did a story on him this past week. And he was hired by Venture Richmond to go and to build relationships with many people who are unhoused on Broad Street and the surrounding area. And he really, I mean, he's had his own experience with substance use and with homelessness. And so to bring that credibility and that passion, like he is an amazing human being. And I think we need to replicate that work. I mean, this to your point, we need like
Hi there, Mr. Mayor. I'm Toby. Thanks for joining us tonight. I have a question about the budget specific to the Delta. We talked about a $60 million gap. That's significant. That's on the revenue side. And I think we know that gap is a function of or a lot of what we're talking about tonight is a function of that Delta. I'm wondering, this budget is basically closed, right? It's pretty well built, right? But next year we're going to put the budget process all over again. As you're going through this now, you've been here for a couple of decades plus, but you're now here 4 months. You're a smart guy, a quick learner. What do you see as opportunities for the revenue side and closing that gap, particularly in an increasingly complex economic and financial environment?
Yeah, great question, Toby. So the first thing I'll say is that in some ways, next year's budget is going to be even more difficult than this year's budget because of the movement of our tax assessment cycle. So right now, our tax assessor starts his whole team, they start their work in January, and we start our budget process really in October, November, and by the time that we actually have to submit and present the budget to City Council, the assessor has really only had about 2 months, maybe 3 months worth of assessment work and looking at the tea leaves and figuring out the economic situation to be able to give you an accurate number on tax assessment. Now, that is problematic because there could be a lot of movements that happens economically, and usually, the last 7 years or so, that's been moving to the good, and so we've ended up having a lot more flexibility in the budget. What we want to do is get more accurate with it. And so, City Council voted last year to move the assessment cycle. So instead of starting in January, the assessor will start their work in July, and that then means when we're actually in the throes of the budget process, they now have 7, 8, almost 9 months of work under their belt, and they have much more accurate predictions on revenues from tax assessment. Problem is, moving that mid-year creates some uncertainty, and we've got to figure out what to do in the next year. And so what we decided to do was freeze tax assessments for 2027. Now remember, real estate tax is 60% of our general fund. It's the vast majority of what the city pulls in. And so for that to be flat from FY26 to fiscal year 26 to 27 really is going to make it a very constrained situation next year. Now, worst case scenario is that we have to sort of take a short-term loan or dip into reserves to be able to cover needs for 1 year. Because what's going to happen in 28, and what everybody needs to be prepared for, is that we're going to get almost a double hit. So instead of the 6 to 7% increase we've seen each year, it's going to be flat for next year, but then it's going to be 10, 12, 14% the following year. And so we've got to both prepare everybody for that, but also deal with the budget realities. So that's just one comment I'll make about next year's budget process. The deeper part of your question is our work on preparing the budget starts the day after we vote on this budget. And for me, coming into this role, it is really doing that deep work in each agency and figuring out, okay, where can we streamline things? Where can technology be deployed so that we can reduce personnel costs? So fire is a great example, right? Right now, the way that we're structured as a shift structure, guarantees a certain amount of overtime for everybody, which is 5.5. So it comes at a big expense because firefighters work typically 24, sometimes 48-hour shifts, sometimes longer, days. So what we've got to do is look at best practices around the country in terms of the way that we set up shift schedules and minimize the cost from overtime, but still make sure that our needs are met. So there's one example of where structurally we've got to look at what we're doing and really tighten up the belt and figure out okay, is that a place that we can actually save a significant amount of money, not by reducing fire services, but by just changing the way that we staff the fire department. I think there's a lot of work, and Leon's going to help us with this, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done around contracting, right? Like, I would say there's not been a very rigorous process of procurement to really make sure that we're getting the best bids and we're really creating a rigorous review process to save money on those contracts. And so that's going to be a big focus, particularly in the Department of Public Works and Department of Public Utilities. So I think the work leading up to next year's budget cycle is figuring out like how do we, just like any business, right? Like where do you tighten up, where do you streamline, where do you become more efficient? And that's going to take the iterative work of the assessor, of the auditor's office to help us identify what those opportunities are. But I do think going into next year's budget, I'll have had more than 2 months to really like get into the operation and make some of those recommendations.
And no second water crisis.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for that. It's really helpful. I appreciate that. I love a follow-up question, so I'm going to be the guy. I love improving operations. I love shaving expenses. I run a business myself, but I'm really interested if you can unpack the revenue side. Like we have a really aspirational and nationally award-winning master plan. We have a sustainability plan that's phenomenal. Sustainability office is doing excellent work. We have public works that are essential. We have a cool bus system, but we don't have, honestly, modern public transit, right? So that $60 million delta is honestly just to bring us up to baseline. How do we really pound down on that revenue side of the budget?
Yeah.
So that we're a 2050 city, not a 2020 city.
Yeah, thank you for pushing it. And I mean, you don't have to worry about Councilwoman Jordan because she gets it, but we do need to get council to a place where they really understand the need for us to grow economically, to grow density, to increase the tax base, listen, one of the mantras of the campaign was like, no big shiny projects. And I'm avoiding the big shiny project, but we do need to develop undeveloped parts of Richmond if we're going to maximize our tax revenue, right? So like I said, 60% of our budget comes from real estate tax. 23% of our land, so almost a quarter of the land here in the city, tax exempt. VCU, the state, a few other entities that take up a lot of real estate and don't pay taxes. So I think there's some work and nibbling around the margins that we can do. I mean, like a pilot, the General Assembly it's going to be a long time before we have enough support in the General Assembly to pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. And it's what some communities or some entities do when they're tax exempt. They will pay money into a community to offset that. Our General Assembly shows zero interest. I mean, they pay a $4 million pilot, but they probably own, based on their real estate, probably 60, 70 million a year. So that's long-term work and advocacy we need to do with the General Assembly. I think we actually have a better opportunity with VCU in the short term to make significant co-investments in things like infrastructure. So I'll just give an example. One of the really undeveloped parts of the city is what we call City Center, right? It's that, 5x2, 6x2 block area between the convention center and the hospital that right now is like a defunct coliseum and a bunch of parking lots, right? And so we really need to, for two reasons. One, we have a convention center that is a gem. It's a great facility. We miss out on over $100 million of revenue every year by national conventions that won't come here because we don't have enough hotel beds in walking distance from that convention center. So Catherine and I are working feverishly to figure out how quickly can we get a hotel in the ground and maximize revenues on that convention center. And and part of that is also the space planning for that 2x6 block area. We just got a $2 million grant, and it seems like it's good from the federal government. But we have a $2 million grant to do both the small area planning and also how do you actually finance that degree of capital investment. So that work will get underway shortly. But it's an example of the kind of economic development we have to be focused on. And it's not about big shiny projects, but it is about thoughtfully developing all of the land that the city owns so that we can maximize revenues to be able to support schools and support social services and support all the other needs of the city.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I do too appreciate that question, and I just want to lift up while we're on this room. Maybe held for a long time
was like a bad word that you didn't want to talk about, so the project that people didn't support, except for some people who loved it. However, as we start talking about Cindy Center, I've been encouraged to remember that Navy Hill was a vibrant neighborhood. And as we start to talk about, rediscussing it, let's not forget.
Reimagining Navy Hill.
Right, yeah.
It's not
so-
City Center, it's Navy Hill. Let's keep it Navy Hill.
Yeah, I think you can.
No, my audience here. Rooms in there.
Well, and Janine, so, but to say, let's reclaim.
Yeah,
You know, but there are some things like adding hotels that I would say are no-brainers. And we, I think, have all been frustrated by how long it took the city to get through a lot of different things. Some, were the victim of external factors like COVID or, changing financial, economic winds. But some, I think, just we took too long to get things signed and done. And so I hope some of the lessons of past projects are we need to be able to move a little bit more quickly. We need to be diligent, we need to get the community engagement, but when we know what we're doing, let's go. And so I'm hoping that we can have that sense of urgency and thoughtfulness in getting some hotels around the city center. And I just want to...
Navy Hill.
It is so hard to change it, thank you. That's right, exactly. I think we all feel frustrated by things that the community supported, no one need, have the need. Why is it so hard? How can we get it quicker for things like Navy Hill / City Center? And then I just want to make sure we circle back to some comments that we had earlier about folks ready to engage in the solution, not just identifying the problem. And a task force was mentioned, and I will just mention that we did have the Broad Street Task Force, and there are a number of people who stayed engaged with that. If we want to come and talk about Admiral Clay, talk about how we help folks who no longer have access to the weather shelter, we already have a structure for that. And absolutely we need to hear from everyone who's working on this, because there are differing opinions on what the right approach is. So I don't want you to take back just one thought, but this is something we need to work collectively. So we've all seen it, we've seen the struggles and the individual struggles. So let's do a time check. Sven, how are we doing?
I think we got about
15? Okay, any more questions for myself or for Mayor Bullock? Okay, anyone hasn't asked a question yet? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'd also I'd like to please Doug and Betsy Carr stand up and say hello. We're so glad you're with us.
Great to be here with you. Thank you all for the way that you engage in the community. To see that. Thank you so much.
And Doug and Carl, which council district you
One, two,
Savvy politicians in there.
Okay, so we had 3 more questions. Okay. Oh, okay. I think we'll start here and then we'll work our way back up to the front.
We heard the auditor mention the audit of the streetlight systems, and it's been quite a while that the streetlights have been missed, at least around here. And is the budget going to address trying to catch up with some of that work that hasn't happened? There's exposed wires, there's missing streetlights, there's little block faces on Broad Street that have no lights on. Like Clay Street, the corridor, all the lights are out. So we did a 311 report and said, yeah, we know it's an underground line. That was like a year and a half ago, right? But they're still out. And apparently there was a lot of people talking about this and the contractor not doing their work. So was there an attempt to try to catch up with the work that needs to be done?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I'll be honest, since I have not caught up on that audit. I figured it happened right before I came in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a good push for me to go back and revisit, like, what are the changes we're making. I think the budget absolutely can address it, right? TQ is a pretty significant entity, although I don't know there's a part of it that falls in DPU and there's a part of it that falls in DPW, is that right?
It's currently under DPW.
Okay.
It's still kind of funded by DPW as we're making changes.
Yeah. Okay, well, my homework is to look at the audit report and get a better answer for you, because I don't know the answer.
Just to expand on that for a second, the change on streetlights from being a DPU utility to DPW is relatively recent. It's in the last 2 years. So I think one of the things that we've experienced, heard, is there's been some difficulties in that transition. But once it's securely housed within DPW and they address it.
Yeah, no, I just mentioned, we are working on that audit, the street level one was part one, I guess, phase one of it. Phase two is kind of on those issues that you're describing, what we're looking at currently. And we will obviously make recommendations to make that process more efficient, more effective, how fast things are getting done, what the process is, and we're looking into that currently. Actually, I had a meeting with that today. That is the second part of the site.
But just so I understand the issue, it's that there were multiple requests made for unfinished streetlights or streetlights that are out that haven't been resolved.
The streetlights are missing, cars crashed into the streetlight. You can walk up here at Broad Street and there's every block you walk on, there's at least one streetlight that's gone, completely gone. And it has been for years. And there just seems to be no attempt, up here on Clay Street, there's orange cones over where the streetlights used to be because the wires were just sticking up. And there's other places where the wires are just sticking up. Some of the streetlights, they don't have the access panel on, there's exposed wires there. I don't know why somebody hasn't been electrocuted. I mean, it's everywhere you go in the downtown area where there's a lot of streetlights, there's huge problems. And there seems to be no work to address that. I've never seen anybody replacing the streetlight.
Okay. Well, I hope that's not the case on Broad Street, because I know DPW just did a very significant turning those all into LED lights between like 3rd and Arthur Ashe Boulevard.
Right here, Broad and Belvedere,
Okay.
the whole block face along the ECU door, there's 3 lights missing, have been missing for ages. And the rest of the lights are out. The whole block is dark at night. This is a public safety issue.
And in front of Lowe's.
In front of Lowe's. Okay.
Gonna address that paving room. One of the challenges that we know about that we talked with the city attorney about is that by and large, light poles don't disappear. They get hit, oftentimes by drivers.
Does insurance money come into
Yes.
that? And what happens to the insurance?
Yes, and the city attorney's office has the capacity to be able to go after folks that are destroying public infrastructure and the bond to pay for it. And one of the conversations we've had with the city attorney is sometimes not having capacity to be able to do that. So the city is made whole for that cost. I think, is that Jay?
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. Mine's not a question, but more a point of interest to remember that when you're working on Adams Way Park information and the questionable behavior that's taking place up there, remember that in a proactive view, there's going to be a Ronald McDonald House right on the other end.
Yeah.
And we can't afford to let those kids feel unsafe. Thank you.
My question is about graffiti and public art initiatives. There's a significant, and graffiti exists across our city everywhere. We have a task force that starts to document that over a period of 3 months, and it's pretty significant. As you can see, the growth of how it happens. And as we know, it's a struggle to be a business in this neighborhood. It does not say that people are a well-known place when graffiti says that neglect and complacency. So my question is, what resources are we going to allocate towards this? Because my understanding is there's currently not matching inputs for that. And so it's a burden that falls on both the residents and the businesses in a very significant way in this community in particular.
Okay. I know there's at least, I don't know how far this goes, how much it costs to remediate graffiti, but there's at least $75,000 in the budget that goes to Venture Richmond to drive their graffiti removal program. I don't have a sense of how much more is needed, but happy to have further conversations and bring DPW in and figure out what kind of frequency, what kind of annual budget, and I think probably building towards next year's budget. And then in the meantime, as part of our Broad Street revitalization effort, are there ways that we can I would definitely want to learn more.
One more bonus question since the new questioner.
Thank you, Councilmember Jordan. I always love coming to these events because I feel like we hear so much about really specific situations about the paving on a certain street or the streetlights on a certain block. And I feel like one of the really powerful things about the role of mayor is that you get to both be accountable to sort of follow up on those really specific things, and you're also trying to look at the biggest challenges that our city faces. And so I kind of want to wrap us up, as I apparently have a final question, by taking us back to some of those really, really big citywide things. And I think what I heard you say at the beginning is staffing, schools, and housing. And so maybe to dive a little bit deeper on the housing piece, the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, while they don't have properties in the second district, obviously it's right across the border, before the oldest and largest public housing community in our region. Okay, not one of the big six, but they have smaller properties. And Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority is a quasi-governmental agency that you are not totally in charge of, but you get to appoint commissioners to. And the city budget is chipping a lot of money to redevelop Creighton and sort of support RHA in a range of ways. I'm curious how you are thinking about the city's priorities for RHA, how you want to develop and build that relationship, and what you want to see from RHA over the next few years. So a couple things. One, I think focusing on RHA as a partner to the city and ultimately how to support those 10,000 plus residents in LA public housing, and that is front and center for me. I was a long-time public health director for the city. We did deep work in public housing. I mean, not only did we expand healthcare access, we actually built clinics in each of the big six over the years. We hired residents from those communities to be our community health workers. During a season when there was a real need for housing navigation, trying to help folks find ways out of public housing. I remember sitting around a table with a number of agency heads and basically like, all right, who's going to do this? And everybody else backed away from the table. And they're always saying, and the truth is that the health department, because of our history, our focus on hiring residents, really built a lot of trust over time. And so we then received dollars to build out a housing navigation program at RHA. So it is a place that I've spent a lot of time and energy, but it is a population that is like needs to be front and center for us in the city. Both because I think the concentration of that poverty has been the real challenge, right? It has created a real lack of opportunity for many people living in those communities. And so the way that we think about redevelopment is super important, right? Like there is a certain number of residents living in public housing who, if you gave them a voucher today and gave them a pathway, they would take that and leave in a heartbeat, right? And whether that's go somewhere else in the city or go out to the county. And so one of the things we got to look at is how the voucher program is being administered. Because one of the challenges we're facing currently is that the vouchers, which are all administered by RHA, are only given for a certain amount of money. I don't know exactly what that dollar amount is, but it's fairly limited. It does not allow them to take a voucher and go to the county, because those vouchers are administered by Virginia Housing and by RHA, nor does it cover most of the places in the city that might even accept the voucher. So we really need to look at restructuring the voucher program. And then I think, and this is a little, speaking to my audience here, Brian, but I do think the work of the Office of Community Wealth Building that started so many years ago with this poverty alleviation mission in mind has gotten a little bit away from that. I think we need to really come back around to how are we most effectively supporting those residents holistically so that they can find workforce development, pathways to living wage, and then pathways to housing that's not public housing, right? Because philosophically, public housing was initiated as like a transitional place, right? This is a place to achieve stability and then to be able to move on. What we have not done for decades is provide the level of support, wraparound services, investment in the people so that they can actually take that care of it. And so my hope is for OCWB, social services, and some of the other city entities to be that resumption of services for residents living in public housing. To your question about how it actually works, so there's 9 board members on RHA. I need to look into it. I don't think the mayor has any. City council.
City council.
City council appoints them, yeah. So I think part of our strategy is really getting our friends on council to say, okay, we need better sightlines, we need more accountability, we need to make those appointments a little bit more strategically to make sure that they're driving alongside the city. A couple things that I've done since taking office just to build that bridge. Stephen Nesmith, who's the CEO of the Housing Authority, now serves on my cabinet. So every 2 weeks we're in a room together with a lot of other agency heads, hearing updates and just being brought into the fold so that we can really align from a mission standpoint. And then our leadership team and RRHA's leadership team gets together once a month just to really talk about what are pressing issues. And I'll share one right now that I'm really concerned about. So our Public Housing Authority is on a lot of debt, right? They owe in excess of $5 million to HUD. That debt has existed for a very long time. They are now being pressured by HUD to start to pay that debt off. Now, there's a couple ways to doing that. One is maybe selling and redeveloping. They own a lot of property in the city, and they're going to do some of that. But the other way that they're going to pursue that is through lease enforcement, which inevitably is going to lead to eviction. And you all know, public housing is housing of last resort in many cases. So we're trying to work with RHA to figure out how do we minimize the impact of police enforcement? How do we make sure we're wrapping services around individuals so that they can be successful? And so I think what I'm trying to do is build the bridge with the agency. The longer term strategies, we really need to think about who those board appointments are and how engaged they are and what outcomes they're holding RHA accountable to. Thanks for the question.
All right, thank you so much. We have time check at 7:57. I really appreciate all the thoughtful questions. The people who came out tonight on a pretty lovely evening. And thank you to my presenters, to our hosts, our History Museum of Virginia. We really want to facilitate the staff and security going home on time. So if you want to catch up with your friends, which I encourage, please do it outside on the beautiful